elements will actually work, how can you establish that interaction in the web page. So that's what this session is about. How clicking on a button will open up a pop-up, how clicking on a button or how entering a value would automatically it would turn on to a currency, or how the tabs in the HTML works. So we'll know all those things in the session. So going back to the screen share, so there are basically the events are being categorized into UI events, network events, and focus events. And of course, there are form events as well, but we will go and learn about them. So when you do interaction, when you do interact with the elements on the page, so that's when you generate the mouse events, okay, the UI events. So you interact with the keyboard and you want to access the keyboard, like Control C, Control V on a page will actually work as copy and paste. But how can you replicate the same on your website if you're trying to design an app or something like that? So how do you interact with the service, and how do you know that a particular file has been loaded onto your file or not, or how do you kind of highlight an element that is in focus? So all those things are only possible with these events, and you need to understand these events way better. To the better you have an understanding on these events, the better programmer you would be. So that's in short. So those are the three categories, and I know few people come up with few more categories even, but I basically see them as these events: network, user interface, and focus events. So what is an event and how do you create an event? Let's just say in this example we wanted to create a event on a particular button. Okay, that's where usually most of the time we interact with the web page. So to attach an event to the button, to listen to that event, why do you want to listen to an event? The user is made it clear, made his intention clear, whether it is a submit button on a form or a cancel button on a window. He made his intentions very clear that I wanted to submit, I wanted to cancel, and you need to respond with your code, or your app should respond to that particular intention of the user. In order to do that, you need to configure or listen on that events and work according to the user's intentions. So that's the goal behind understanding events. So now here we have a button element on HTML, but it's just a button until you take help of JavaScript. It's just a button, it's going to be there, and if you click, nothing happens. So when JavaScript comes in and performs these steps, okay, so first JavaScript is a separate subject and HTML is a separate subject and CSS is also a separate subject, and JavaScript can access the DOM structure, document object model. What do I mean by that? It's a tree of elements. Okay, the structure of elements in a HTML page, as you know, in my previous videos you have seen, or in my previous sessions you might have understood the structure. So now JavaScript has access to that DOM tree, and it can select a particular element if it expects. So here you go. So this statement is actually being selecting an event by its ID. You all know what is this method is. This document get element by ID method will actually go look for this ID identifier in the DOM tree, so it finds this button, and then you create a listener event. So basically each click event has an intention. So here in this case the intention is to just log a console when the button is clicked. So that intention is actually kept in a function here, and then you need to add this listener function, this handler function, to a specific element on a specific event. As we have seen in the previous slide, there are different category of events in the HTML DOM. So you need to listen on a specific event of a specific element. So that's the thing you should understand. An element, then a state of that element, whether it is click or mouse over or mouse out or whatever it is. So there are number of events that are there in DOM. So we will look at all those events. But for now, in this example, let's listen on click. So if I click and I have said my button, which is selected this my button, say add event listener, add event listener. So you need to add an event listener on the event of click. So click is, this is an identifier string. So this string is an identifier for a particular element. If you say CLIICK, it doesn't identify. Click is a specific constant or a specific value that will assign that handler function to that click event. That's so far so good. Okay, I've selected that element, I've created my intention or my handler function, and I've on that particular selected element, I've added a handler function onto the click event. And when you add an event, you must always remove an event also when you have no need. So it is removing an event is as important as adding an event, because you don't want something to be there even if you don't need it. So when you don't need it, when you unload a page or you're moving away from the page and you added some of the add event listeners and you don't want them to continue, or in the same page sometimes you want to disable that button, you want to remove that click element on a safer side. You can disable a button, but why take a chance? You can remove that listener, right? So this is the the anatomy of the particular life cycle of an event. You select the element, you create a handler, you attach that handler to the element, and you remove the listener or handler on particular event when you don't need it. Okay, so let's look at this example in live, whether I have this code here, is it working? So let's look at that. So I'm just opening up my VS Code. Okay, so I have some project already opening up. I don't want this project. So yeah, Scribble Weekly, week 5, week 5. I've created a workspace for my VS Code, and I'm now creating a HTML file, that is. And let's just create. So I'm not looking at the chat much. I really need to look at the chat here and now. There's no interface that you can talk to me, so I need to be aware. I receive highs, fine. So yeah, my VS Code is here. Okay, what was my code? I have a code that has a button, and this button has an ID of my button, and I have this say hi button. Now I need to write some JavaScript, as you have seen in the slide. For that I will create a script tag, because anything you write outside is just HTML. Anything inside that you write is JavaScript. So it's simple. So where my button, a variable to store this element, to select an element and store as a reference in further lines of code. So I will say document dot get element by id. So that is a DOM method. Document object has a method called document element by id, and which id you want me to select. So this is one method to select. There is another method that you could select an element. We know that query selector, put a hash. This time you need an identifier to be suffixed or prefixed by a hash. So here I have got my button selected. So let me verify that if it is selected, and if I open the console, I've got my button being locked. So the JavaScript is now having access to that button. How? This container or variable does have a button. Now next is, what do you want it to do when the button is clicked? Function, yeah, I want to say hi. Or I can say, I can put an alert on this particular guy saying, hey, hi, the button is clicked. Now the handler is created. Maybe I can say handler, hi handler. Okay, it is handling the hi button. Now this container dot add event listener. Where do you want me to add? What are the parameters that this add event listener method or function is expecting you to pass? The type of the event map, that is simply a string, and the listener function and a true false boolean that you can pass. We will understand what is true and what happens if it is true or false. But for now we need to worry about these two parameters. First parameter, what is the event type, event map, that is click, and what is the listener. The listener type of that event is click, the listener is handler. And if you go back, now clicking on this button is actually triggering this function. See, so as I was saying, this is a type of an event. Okay, so what are different types of the events? Like say you say mouse over, and if you go over the button, I'm not clicking this time, I'm just moving my mouse on top of that button, and the event is getting triggered. So this time around, but it looks odd on a button to kind of have a hover event. How I change it to click. Okay, so you can know these events. Okay, simply at you can search in Google mouse events list in JavaScript. It's not that hard to find. So there are many number of articles that you can find. Okay, mouse down, mouse up, mouse out, mouse over. So many context menu is also an event type. Context menu is like when I right click the mouse and this menu is appearing. So when you wanted to listen to this kind of actions also, you can listen to that event and you can stop creating it. So you can listen on a double click event just like this. You copy paste this double click and you say single click, nothing is happening. Double click, so I don't know if you're able to see, let me zoom it a bit. A single click did not trigger this alert because this handler is not triggered. A double click, another case, triggered it. So you can change this type, event type, and this particular handler will actually gets triggered on that particular element on top of on that particular type of the event. Okay, so that is the simplest example of how to handle a event, how to assign an event on a particular element. But is that all? No, that's not all. So so we need to understand one more aspect of an event, that is called event object. So what is an event object? Okay, so when an event happens on a DOM, okay, you need to understand where this event is coming from, why this event is generated, and how to handle that event, and so much more metadata is readily available. And DOMs or events, JavaScript events, are kind enough to pass in that information automatically for this handler function. So you can say event, okay, you can pretty much name this particular parameter anything you want. Okay, it doesn't have to be an event, it just be event or anything. You doesn't have to pass that, you doesn't have to specify anything on the listener assignment, but rather you could say, you could call that event or anything, and you can just say console.log event. And let's go back to our example, and in the console when I click it, so actually the event I tried it to double click, I don't want to click double times. So when I click, the handler function is giving an alert. Along with that, I have got some other information as well. What is that information? That is this information, the event information is being sent from this listener, add event listener method. Okay, the click event is sending up the event object, so that you could understand more about that event. If you see, there's much more information about the event. So what is the target element? So this is the target element, because this event, okay, this event is being fired from this target. Okay, and what is the source element is this. If you can track this source element right until to the top of the top of the DOM. Okay, so your next sibling, your previous element, so it logs so much more information, okay, that you can take advantage of. So if you wanted to kind of just know the mouse position when the event is clicked, when the button is clicked, okay, so you can do that. Okay, for example, on this let's just create a div. Okay, let's just create I'll give an example how to take advantage of these two parameters, client X and client Y, and you can see a very interactive UI. So let me create a div. The style of this div should be height 50, width 50, px. I need a color to identify this guy. So background color is that. I can see this div and I wanted to select this div, so I will say my div, and same way where my div is equals to, I'm doing the same query selector, and then it's an identifier, so I'll give you a pound prefix, and then finally function, or you can create a function like this. You can create a variable and say mover is equals to a function. Okay, this is how also this this way also you can create a handler function. And there is another awesome concept called arrow function that will even simplify the way you can write a function. This is also a valid function. It doesn't have to have a keyword called function, and you need to just put these two characters in order to make this as a function. So there are specific traits of these arrow functions. So for now you need to know that the syntax is much more simplified than this guy. So that's what another way I just wanted to cover that too. So now I need to understand the event object too. Now let me log it for now. The event object Okay, let me comment out these two things for now to just kind of, okay, this is a HTML file. My shortcut to disable it, to comment the code is not working, so I'm just going old school. Okay, now I'm working with this div, I'm not working with this button anymore. Let me disable this as well. So now I have an element, I have a selector, an element selected, I have the function handler. Now what I need to add a listener on mouse, sorry, mouse over. Okay, move. Okay, I just said mouse move, and mover. Now if I move my mouse here, see how rapidly the event is sending that information. So the event is getting fired that many times I move my mouse on that particular element. Now what do I wanted to do, achieve? Okay, I'm getting this X and Y positions when I move my mouse on this element. Okay, can you see that? I want to use this X and Y positions and move this div also. How can I do that? Okay, you know JavaScript can also alter the elements. Okay, so the next thing that you need to understand is the concept of this object. Okay, when a button has been assigned with a handler function, inside that handler function there is a specific keyword called this will hold the reference of this button. Okay, how can you verify that? So when you say this dot id and save that event, when I come back to my example, when I mouse over, yeah, it's actually logging the window because it is an arrow function. So yeah, I'm sorry, I should have taken the arrow function because this scope changes in the arrow function. That's what the caveat about arrow functions. I shouldn't have rushed. Fine. So when you see, when you use this function, this keyword, the keyword has a reference to the button itself. Sorry, the div itself. Okay, I can access that div from this handler function with a simple this keyword. You don't have to select again because you already selected that event and you already assigned that event. When you are in that, when the context is in the same handler function, that this keyword will actually refer to that element itself. That's the reason when the event is being triggered, you see that this reference to that element. Now I have the reference to that element. Okay, and I can access the style property of it. Okay, this time around I don't want it to log it. Style dot top is equals to event dot, I'm getting a client text, right, plus px. I'm just simply altering a CSS property of this particular element on style dot top, and I'm assigning that client text that I'm getting from event. Okay, so this is, am I referring to the correct variable in the console.log? The event is coming, I'm not referring to that. Variable is light. So let me see if the style is being assigned. So the top property is being assigned. Okay, So when I mouse over, the property is being assigned. Okay, the catch is that the position property is set to nothing, right? So position absolute, and now it moves. So I need to have this, I need to make this I need to move this out from that particular stack, HTML element stack. Now my top property is making sense to this element. Now whenever I move mouse, I'm getting that, info. So I can say left, I can say Y, so I need to do some math on removing that height and width of that particular element. I need to change this mouse move method from document, from this element to document. So whenever I move my mouse on documents, I wanted to assign that X and Y position to this div. So basically, you can use these methods, you can get this information, you can use this information that is coming from that event, and you can put it to a good use and make that simple interaction very attractive and very intuitive. So it's up to you. How do you want to create the many so the internet is not is full of sources to understand this interactivity, but I just wanted to give you the overview of this event and how the metadata of this event will actually help you. Okay, so keeping that aside, the next aspect that we wanted to understand, so this object we covered. So now the important object that we needed to understand is the event bubbling, the concept of event bubbling. Okay, so what is event bubbling? So if I have two elements in the same, let's just say I wanted to change it to click element, okay, and this is the outer div, and inside that div I have another inner div. If I have an inner div, okay, and if I did the same thing, let's just say I wanted to handle both of this, like maybe this guy. To identify this guy, let's add some more styles on this inner guy. Maybe this time around it is 20px and 20px, and the color could be blue or something else to identify. So this is inner and that is outer, so width can be 20 is not enough for it to fit. So this is outer div and this is inner div. Click event is actually working, so you see that moving. So basically, let's just comment out this code for now. I don't want it to move a lot. So if I click the element, I'm still receiving, okay, one element. Even if I click the child element, you could see it doesn't matter if I'm clicking the parent element or child element, because I have this event already assigned on the parent element. Okay, so event element actually inherits the parent element's click event by default. Okay, and if you do the same, okay, if I added okay the second div, which is having an ID of inner, and did the same with this guy, see what happens. I'm getting two events. Even though I'm actually clicking on the inner one, I'm not touching, my mouse is right inside the inner div, okay? And I see two locks. Of course, you would say that I've used the same function on both the elements, but technically if I'm clicking this guy, only this should actually clicked. Why? I should not see two locks, but instead I should see only one log. Okay, you don't have to assign two events to in order to listen on a particular parent element. If there is a parent element, and if you are assigning an event to the parent element, that is enough. It actually inherits to the child element. If in some case there is a case that you have this listeners on the child and on the parent, okay, even if the handler is different from the child, okay, both child and parent click elements will get triggered because they are inside the one inside the other. Okay, so that hierarchy goes up to the document object, the document itself from this inner. So it could be 3 or 4 or 5 in a given scenario. So this is called event bubbling. So if you have an event listener, click event listener on this guy, and I have assigned some handler to it. If I click the inner event, the outer event also gets triggered, and you will see the confusion happening a lot in the HTML. It will happen a lot in HTML, JavaScript. So to avoid such bubbling, okay, we have different methods to avoid such bubbling, or sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't need it. Maybe I can try with another function. Over to, if I click it, see, the handlers are different. So let's just say I have a different handler, different selectors, different assignment operators, but on clicking this inner, the other is also triggering. Okay, this time around the handler functions are also not the same. So this is actually the bubbling. So you need to stop this bubbling, because if my intention is to only listen on the inner element and should not go to the top and should only stop on the child element, you can really do that with the help of event object. The method on event object is stop propagation. Okay, this is not the correct keyword. Stop propagation is a method that will stop that behavior, because you need to stop it on the child element. Okay, you need to stop it on the child handler function. So next time around, if you click on the child, okay, I didn't add this console log. That's just how you are not seeing that log. If I have my log, now both the handlers have the log event, and if I click the inner element, now this statement event.stop propagation is stopping, okay, to trigger the parent handler also. Even though I clicked on this inner, it is stopping from that event bubbling, and now I see only one handler executing. If I remove everything and give you, so if I don't have this statement, both the events will work on the same click. The child element is clicked and both the elements are being triggered. So you will stop propagation. So this event object has another important method as well. Okay, so you can take advantage of it many other times. So let's just say that this is not a div, this is an anchor. Okay, I particularly don't need to have any other things. So this is just, consider this is just as an anchor, href to go to www.google.com. And what is the default behavior of anchor? If I click it, it will take you to that particular page. Maybe I need to specify the protocol. We go back. If I click it, okay, that's strange. What did I miss? It's actually searching in the same URL. There is a folder called www.google.com, but that's not the case. It's going to Google. Okay, so you can stop this default behavior of going to some other link, okay, on the click event. Okay, let's just say that we have a click event here. Okay, so the same inner element. Now I don't want to say it inner, I want to say link, and I change that identifier to link, my link, and here also my link. Let me comment this out, remove this. So now this is much cleaner. Okay, I have a link here, and I have this tab propagation that I don't need now because it's one element. Now I put a console log, but if I click it, the console log is coming in, but it is actually redirecting into some page, because that's the default behavior of an anchor element. But sometimes you want it to be clicked, but you don't want the default behavior to kick in. So then you can also take advantage of this event object and say prevent default. This method works on almost any particular HTML element, and it stops the default behavior of that element. What is the default behavior of a form? Because if I submit click, the form will automatically submit that form to a given URL. If you wanted to stop that submission and validate that form, you really wanted to use the prevent default. Okay, if I click it, now it's not going, even though the configuration on that particular element is suggesting it to go to specific URL. On the click event, you said that event.prevent default. It's so easy to remember and very important, guys. If you wanted to stop a default HTML behavior on a particular element and do some JavaScript operation, in that case, you definitely want to use you take the advantage of this prevent default method on the event. Okay, you assign that event and you get this event object as a bonus, and you use that prevent default method, and you will see that default behavior of a link is actually being stopped with that method, help of method. Okay, now you could see the page is still there. You can do some things. You might want to use the same link for your internal document changes or something. If you wanted to stop that kind of behavior, you can stop it. Okay, we talked about event bubbling, we talked about event object and event target, we know event type. Okay, we have used some of the default things, and we talked about prevent default. Stop immediate propagation, that it will only stop one level up, not to 2-3 levels up. And stop propagation will actually stop the bubbling effect. And we know about this object. Okay, so the items that are on my screen are the most prominent events that are being used on a space. I would say these are all the famous events. Rest all are like they are there, you can use, but these are all the most used events. And I would like to build a specific couple of examples. Okay, in here, like an accordion, we have like an accordion, and I wanted to give you an understanding of key element. We have seen the mouse element example. We have the key element, the key down and key up that was supposed to be interacted with this keyboard. Okay, and the input blur events, and the forms submit event or anything. Okay, we will look at 3 examples. 1, we will build an accordion. 2, we'll work with a text field to create that hover effect, blur and input, all the events for a technically possible for a text. And we will look at a form events like load, unload, resize, scroll. There are many events, and you could really give them a try on your own, but I wanted to run you through with some examples. So let's go back to our file. Okay, create another file called accordion. So it's always important to kind of understand the terminology around the events, the handler methods. So even though it is a simple function, this function is now being called as a handler because it's going to handle an event. Okay, even though if it is a simple function, by nature it is a handler function. So you should understand the terminology. So this is a statement that will actually assign an event on the event, handler on the event. So you need to understand how technically you need to sound. Okay, you don't need to, I mean, you have to learn the language or terminology in order to kind of sound. And because most of the time you tend to get help from others, tend to get help from Google, but you don't know how to refer to that particular subject. The chance of you getting help from a stranger or a documentation is very less. So you need to understand the terminology as well. So this is a very basic example, guys. Hey, what, they spelled it wrong. Oh my god. I have this accordion. Okay, I spelled it wrong. Okay, let's just say that I have this container and I have this dot detail. And each heading have an article. Some lorem ipsum information. If I had some lorem ipsum information, I would have had. So I just have this div container and a detail component which has a heading and some description, article description around it. Let's just say we have 2-3 of them. Okay, how does it look? It looks like this, but all of them are actually present at the same time. But I wanted to hide these things and show this one. I zoomed a bit. I think I'd have to zoom it out. Like when 1 showing, hide 2 and 3. When 2 is showing, hide 1 and 2. So that kind of behavior. If I click, show this. If I click, hide 2 and show this. You can build that simply in JavaScript with events help. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate. Let me just pull in some information. Just some random information like about Chromium. So I'll use this information, 3 paragraphs, just to make the content big enough on this guy. Just zoom it. Same content on the 3 paragraphs. Okay, now how do you select these elements and handle a click? First question. Okay, you have 3 elements that you need to assign a click event handler, because what I just said, I click on a heading, this will show, and rest of them automatically hides. And if I click on this should show. So I need to assign click events on these 3 elements. So there is an easy way to do that selection process quickly. Okay, so what is that? So let me just write some JavaScript here. So I just wanted to go to a different files for that. Let me just create this JavaScript file. So let's just write JavaScript in 2 different, JavaScript in a separate file and HTML in a separate file. Now I wanted to select the headings, all the headings first. I wanted to select all the headings in one statement. Can I do that? Yes, you can do that. Document dot query selector all. Okay, that is one more method which will actually select every element on the page which is having the class name. And if you look at that example, if you look at that result of that particular statement which is stored in that headings variable, what I get in this is an array. Okay, a list, a node list, an array of elements. So we already know what is an array. In the previous videos I've explained already. So an array is set of elements. So when I selected with this statement query selector all and used a class selector instead of an ID selector, okay, just the way that CSS is selecting and assigning the styles, I've selected all the elements. Since this is an array, I can iterate through, right? I can say for each, and I can say function, or I can just write a arrow function. Just a while ago we have seen an arrow function is also simply a function. Okay, now I can actually log that element. Okay, what happens? Console.log for each is a loop, for each is a loop. Okay, element, I just say this is a string. If I save it, if I go back, you see heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. If I have another article, another detail, I get 4. So this is dynamic, very dynamic. This statement is selecting all of them and keeping in an array. This loop method, which we discussed earlier in the loops, that for each, array method for each, is actually executing 4 times. Okay, I mean the times that the elements count is, that's matching with the elements count, and calling this function. Okay, you can have this function here, const loop for all equal to, and you can just give it like this, and it still works. See, so for each of these element in these headings array, I'm just assigning this method to run. So now I get to select these things. So for each element I wanted to assign an event. Can I do that? Yes. Since you have the reference for that element, you can say add event listener and say click, and you can assign another handler, const click handler equals to event. Okay, this is not used inside that function, so it's actually not highlighted, so I'll say this. So the catch here is that now this time we are having this statement looped for the array of elements. I have 4 elements in this. I have created a loop for all the 4 elements, and for each element I call this function. This function attaching the same handler for all the elements. Okay, now you can add some log here to understand if it is working on all the elements. From click, if I click it, from click, second click, third click, fourth click. Very good. So with one statement we are able to assign the handler, the same handler, and all the headings elements. So I have all the 4 here. I looped it. In the loop method, the method that I used on the loop is assigning an event handler to all of them. Now event dot which element is which. How do I identify? Event dot target is a metadata that will give you access to a particular element that you clicked. See? So if you click on 3, the log being identifying 3, you click 2, it is identifying a specific element. Now, if I on the target, if I just say next sibling, okay, I should get this. See, I'm getting a path here. Okay, if I click here, I'm just getting next sibling. The next sibling is what? Text, and that text's next sibling is article. Next element sibling, maybe we'll try this article, this article, this article. Okay, that's good. First, I'll do what? I'll add a style. I'll add a style to all article elements in the heading to hide. Display property to none. By default, all articles default property is set to none. Now every article is now hidden. Now when I clicked a specific element, I'm finding, so when I click the heading, I'm finding an article element. Now I can simply say style dot, I say I got to that element. I can say I definitely know that on this element JavaScript has access to the style object, and it can simply set the display property to block. Just like that, you can assign the style to that. Very cool, right? Okay. Hey, you said when I click on 3, 1, 2, 3 should go hide. Does that happen magically, or is that something you have to do? Of course, when you refreshed, what did you do? What did you do? On first load, you set the article property, style property to display none for all. And that's the reason everything was hiding. If I click, you're showing it. But where are you hiding it again? You're not hiding it again. So you need to identify which is clicked. You need to identify which is not clicked. And then you should hide. Complicated process. Let's make it simple. When I click this, by default, I will hide everything. Okay. And then show the one which is next to the clicked element. Okay. Let me do that. Okay, so what I will do, where document dot where articles is equals to document dot get elements by tag name. Maybe this time around I don't have many tag names, so I only have those elements with the tag, but don't use this tag name. You can use a better selector here. Okay, you can use query selector and just say article, or you can have a ID selector or class selector on all the articles and you can select, but I'm actually trying to select all the articles now. Okay, so log, let me verify if I got all the articles. Okay, I got it. All the articles are here. So in a function, const, okay, here itself, const hide all is equals to arrow function. Very simple form of a function. It is very easy. I stored that on a hide all function, hide all variable. Now articles dot, it is an array, so I can use for each. Okay. Element dot the same thing, style dot instead of block none. So what is this method is doing is, it is going to each element on the articles array and setting their styles to none first. So what I'll do, I'll use my brain nicely, I'll call that function first. Okay, now this method will actually set everything to none, and then the next element will set the specific one that next to that clicked element will set to block. So now everything is hidden. Okay, article.forEach is not a function. Why? This should be, sorry, I think I messed up something. This is an array. Query selector all. Okay, got it. I've used tag name, so I should have used query selector all. So if you used document.tag element, you should use array of 0. So yeah, I messed up there. Query selector all, it's better way to use. Query selector all actually returns an object array of elements. Now if I click, this is coming. If I click, that is going. So what it is doing, this statement hiding everything. So I'm using this function to hide everything first, and then enabling the one I want, that one that I clicked. Okay, that's the magic. Hey, by default I wanted to enable only one. You can do that simply. What you will do? When everything is selected, select the first element, do the same thing that you did here. Okay, the first one is visible. If you wanted to make it to the second one, this is an array. Second, you change the number here. So I set it to 4, right? 3, this is should be 4, right? By default you can hide show 1, but I wanted to just stick with 0. Voila, I got it. So it's just a simple JavaScript code, but you can see what sort of a user experience that you can build with the help of these events, loops, and integrating everything together. So we haven't gone so far of using if conditions, CSS animations, kind of move those elements, you know, scale down and scale up that element, and you can scale it to any extent. And this is not the only way to achieve an accordion. Okay, this is one way of achieving it, and this is a very basic way of doing it. Okay, so that's where I will stop about these things. So if you have any questions, the chat panel is free. Post it in the comments also. So I'll look at those comments and answer any questions that you have. I'll post the link to these files. So we are over the time box. So I wanted to go about, I'll make another video on how to use the form events and how to use the events on text elements. But for this video, I think that's enough. So if you have any questions, if you want me to go over some logic, I'm looking at the chat panel. I know you can build all these components in React with much ease, but trust me, even though you write things in React, React will again boils it down to JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So you have to understand this basic in order to crack any other UI framework such as Angular or React or anything, Vue. Thank you guys. I'll be posting the links in the description. Okay, I see a request to try to change the bitrate somewhat. So it's just about adding. So if I have to change the bitrate, I have to say like this: transition all 1 second. Maybe I stick with height. Let's just have it on all articles. So now I'm actually playing things with display none and display block. To animate something, so you have to use a different property, that is height 0. Okay, I stop the server and say go live. Okay, height 0, overflow. So I'm just trying to change things. Overflow is hidden. Now in the visible section, now I change the height to 0. In the JavaScript section, I'm actually manipulating the wrong CSS to kind of add or show it. So this time around I have to show height. Manage with height, HEI GHT is equals to, this is the target element, so I'll store it in target element where target element article is this element, and I'll say article dot height is equals to article dot scroll height plus px. I hope this should work. Maybe I can set some number here. Oh, it is okay. I think I have some issue here. Oh, sorry, this is setting still display none. So yeah, I have to change the hide all method also to hide to 0px. So hide all methods will actually set. I need to look at that. It is display block. No, this is not display block. Maybe I can set it to 200px. Right. Oh, sorry. Style dot height that is too much. Actually the scroll height should work. So article dot scroll height property should give the exact height that the position holds. And yeah, now this time around, whatever the height the originally that element was holding is the value that is from scroll height. And if you wanted to kind of change that speed, you could say 250 milliseconds, so it'll be much faster. So I'll use the same property here. This is kind of annoying. What is that scroll height? Array of 0 not scroll height, its original height, that's what it refers. See, very fast. Hope PokeFan is happy. I kind of like clicking it now with the animation. It's just simple strategy. It looks very awesome. Hey, thanks for that session, suggestion, Pokefan. Is it Vinith, right? Nice suggestion though. Any other any other challenge that you wanted to throw? Like, you can ask. I'll try to accommodate that in this. So do comment anything that you wanted to create with plain JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. I'll take up that challenge and put up another live session. So if there are no questions, I'll be ending this live. Now, Yuvraj, for your query, I think frame rate is already there. You are late to the party. You can increase if you are referring to the speed of that animation. You can say 500 milliseconds. So that's kind of little late. If you can set it to, instead of milliseconds, you can set it to 2 seconds. So it will be like slowly coming up and going back. So you can bounce it back. I set up this live with a little bit of lag, and that's the reason I think there is a lag to kind of respond to. So I was looking at the chat here and coming here. So I think I get better in future. But yeah. So thanks for joining, guys. I think I like that suggestion of adding animations to the accordion. So I think, hope you all liked. So let me know what else you wanted to learn. I can quickly create a live recording, a live session, and come on, and you can throw me challenges and I can try to solve it. Oh, super page is not working in the description. Okay, I'll check that. I think they removed my page. I'll work on it. Thank you, guys. I am ending the stream.